Hey, what's up? My name is Alex and I'm a professional music producer. I just finished FF7 Remake and that game blew me the hell away, especially for its music. We have everything we ever wanted. If you're an electronic music fan, we got stuff like if you love orchestral music like me, we got some crazy renditions of the battle theme and stuff like and most especially if you're a metalhead and you're a fan of the old sound of Final Fantasy VII, we got shit like man, this is so dope. I love this track. Makes you want to headbang super freaking hard. Now, it starts in the same exact way as that boss track that we all grew to love as a kids. You know, that beautiful guitar. Can you hear that? Like, it sounds way more metal, and it's because of the drums. Like that kick pattern, a super fast kick pattern that is very common in metal. The original didn't have that much crazy amount of drums. Also, this feels at the end so freaking cool. So it gives me goosebumps. Now, in the second half that we have here, what we see is this riff coming in. You know that? Now it's being played by guitars and strings. So cool, man. Love it. I absolutely love that Mitsuto Suzuki and Masashi Hamauzu kept this synth solo because it's a big identity of the Final Fantasy soundtrack. It kind of reminds me of Dream Theater, like The Count of Tuscany. Kind of progressive metal like that, right? Because actually Nobuo Uematsu was a huge fan of progressive rock or progressive metal. There's like Fight with Seymour is basically a progressive rock track. What I love the most is that this solo doesn't repeat like we expect it to do, but rather moves on to a new part that is like so freaking cool. I love it, man. This has like everything that I want to hear in music. Like Final Fantasy now went full on Attack on Titan. We have some very cool harmonizations on the strings riff. That variation there, jeez, man, so cool. And then what I love the most is that we have this sort of accents on the choir and the strings and the brass playing chorus. So it's like enforcing some of the notes in the riff. We also have some color response because there's like a brass that has a crescendo that leads to these notes. Underneath that, you also have this super crazy bass line. And all it's like so cool. Now for the next part. Do you recognize this? Like, it should sound familiar because this is actually this. The guitar is playing that riff. However, the cool thing about this riff is that if you slow it down, it's basically the landing from Final Fantasy VIII, Nobuo Uematsu quoting himself. What I love about this, other than the fact that they took an organ and transformed it into a guitar solo, which is super badass, is the fact that it doesn't end in the same way we expect it to end. So they're playing with our expectations all throughout the track. As you see, it ends with a variation. Like this variation. Like you have this variation that leads to the next part where the strings are actually taking over. And you have this beautiful harmonization. And then that's new, and that's a subtle way they use throughout all of this track. These very beautiful variations at the end of our riffs that we know to subvert our expectations. They are used to build the hype of what comes after, and it works so freaking well. Like it links the track very beautifully. Like, wow, man. Jeez, man. I freaking love this track so freaking much. It's so cool, and every single element is providing something of value. Right here, we have some brass that is actually giving this like an edge. It's like playing a scale like but doing it very fast, like a, you know. And when you use it in orchestral music, it really gives an oomph to everything else. So it's like So that's what's going on. That's why it sounds so freaking epic. And then it goes on. Man. That guitar. Man, jeez. Dude, like, did you hear that guitar solo? I love it that they're not really taking over too much in the mix, but they're there and they justify them repeating certain parts twice. In the way these guitar solos are written, they totally remind me of Tsuyoshi Sekito, like the guy who composed the music for Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, which was full of guitars. He's also the guitarist for the Black Mages, so it makes sense. I think this is his like virtuosistic style. It's so freaking... Man. And again, the strings are ba 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 ba. Now comes my favorite part. So cool. This part is referencing this section. You know those strings there? Now they're moved to the like. Ah, man. So cool. So very cool. Now what I love the most is the way this ends. Like, man, so freaking awesome. So freaking, I love this passage so much. You guys know me by this point, you know I'm a nerd for changes in the harmony, and this is the moment where they do this beautiful modulation. Like, this is what strings are playing, and they end with that major, like when you do that, when you go from minor to major, that's called a modulation. That's going from a very dark mood to a very beautiful, major, epic, bright mood. And in a boss track, going from minor to major results in this sense of triumph, like, and you feel elated. You're like, I can freaking beat this boss. You're like, yeah, I can do this, you know? And actually, this is reminiscent of Final Fantasy XII music. And as if that wasn't enough, what I also love is that in this modulation, they also added some melodies on guitars and strings. So not only it modulates, but it also, those melodies carry it forward and make it sound even more epic. Like, we were already all over the top. We were like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And that's ba 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 down. On the guitar, it's like, it takes you beyond what you thought was possible in terms of epicness. And I love to do that in my music. Actually, I did that in my Genova cover that I published months before FF7 Remake was out. But this is just me being a nerd, sorry. Let's go back to Airbuster. Man. This is carrying on so perfectly. And then we think, okay, it's been 2 minutes. This track must loop or repeat itself, right? No, it doesn't. It freaking doesn't. It's like, man, fuck. This is, again, Attack on Titan sort of shit. Like what they did now, this is sort of like called a bridge. If you want to add that degree of variation where you have a new section that is completely different from everything you heard before, you need a part that splits, you know, that moment, and the bridge serves as that. So in fact, we have this, after that, that is a very effective way to carry the track forwards with variations. And then we have this bridge that, man, just gets me like, fight mode, man. So cool. That bass, dude. Okay, so there's so many things to talk about this one, okay? What's happening right now is this is a build-up. Everything is gone, and we only have some very minimal kick pattern and some strings that are playing chords that keep on getting bigger and bigger as the build-up goes. So it starts like this, right? Highest note is an E6, then it goes to F#6, and now it goes to A6, G7, G8. So you have this, like, when you rise in terms of tone like that, it creates a sense of like the track is opening up, especially if you do that with the orchestra. And dude, the bass at the end of this build up, bro. Oh my god, like, this reminds me of one of my favorite bass players, Chris Wolstenholme, the legend, the bass player from Muse. The reason why I say this reminds me of Psycho is that in Psycho, Chris Wolstenholme is playing triplets on the bass. That sounds very similar to this. It's very gentle and very warm, but he's playing triplets, and triplets are stuff like this. And what I love the most about this bass line is the way that's like, man. Love it so friggin' much. Like what they're doing with the orchestra in this track. I love that it's not stealing the show from the guitars, and the guitars are not stealing the show from the orchestra. Guys, I just made a cover of Birth of a God, which I published last week, where I showed you how I went through the process with a friend. And our struggle was, he wrote these kick-ass guitars, I wrote this kick-ass orchestra, and it's very hard to match them. Here, they had no problems. It just works so freaking perfectly. Now, let's analyze what's going on in the orchestra. Basically, they have this riff that we all know. Right, we got this, which is beautiful, because we also have this harmonization on top of that. Underneath that, we obviously have some brass. And the icing on the cake, really, which is also the reason why this sounds so freaking rock, is the drum kit. The orchestra is not stealing from the guitars, it's adding to the guitars with these rhythmic notes and with that beautiful accent there. Man, this totally reminds me of stuff like Nightwish. I love this part. This is where they went like full progressive rock. Like it's like they're not even trying not to flex. They're flexing so freaking hard now, because like this, what they're doing now is very hard to predict, right? Like it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. No, it's like if you count, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that's like. Did you notice how many times the time signature changed in that moment? Like, geez, did they have to do that? No, but I'm glad they did, because it's freaking awesome. And it reminds me of bands that I love, like Haken. Every single music nerd as me lost their shit when they heard this time signature change, for sure. Nice. We all know this thing, don't we? Bro. Those variations, man, like, I love this part because, like, the solo is actually being harmonized with another guitar solo that is playing, like, on the right speaker. It goes like this. So this technique of putting two different solos that harmonize, you know, with this counterpoint where they have the same direction, right, really, but different notes, it creates this sort of sound. Is very common in the music of a band that I deeply love. It's called Avenged Sevenfold. It's so refreshing to hear this in the soundtrack of the game I love the most. I don't know. I cannot describe it. And that way it ends, like that variation, like, and that is like, man. I love it. I know I've been saying this for this whole video. Every single time I play a part, I'm like, I love this part so much. It's because, like in the game itself, they abandoned the idea of creating down moments in this track, at least for too long. There are no down moments where you're like, oh, this is boring. No, it's super engaging from the beginning to the end, because they keep adding new stuff all the time, all while keeping the main motif, the one we know and we love. And what I love about this choir is it reminds me of the idea of a crowd chanting. It's there to kind of give this feeling that you can join in the crowd and chant with the choir. This is how many of the absolute trendsetters in pop music are written. I'm talking about Coldplay, Viva La Vida, and Paradise. They have these beautiful choruses where you have a choir that you can sing along with and you feel part of the song. I love it. And also this idea of using choir reminds me a lot of, obviously, one of my favorite games, Bloodborne. But also Final Fantasy 15. And that was the game where they really started harpooning hard on using choir and epic music in Final Fantasy. And I was like, yes, yes, please. Man. See? That's what I'm talking about. Like, dude, why did I say it reminds me of Bloodborne and NVIDIA and Final Fantasy 15? Well, in both NVIDIA and in Lawrence, the first vicar, you have an organ. So we have it here too. And I'm like, bro, are you for real? Is this for real? Man. We have this. But it's playing by the choir on a different tone, like. And then we also have this being played by the strings. So that like, this is almost like a duo mix of the track itself, like it's blending different parts together and it works so well. Damn, like how? Dude, I love it. I honestly feel like they pulled all the stops to make this track sound as amazing as possible. Like at this point in the game, which is like in the middle of the game, you feel like they already unleashed on you the ultimate Final Fantasy VII Remake track. And actually, it's not even the ultimate track. There's some tracks that like, man, there's some tracks that got me even more goosebumps. But this one really, in the way it ends, you're like, okay, they're greedy. They went hard. They went freaking. And bro. Bro, what the hell? What are we talking about? What the hell we're talking about? Oh, jeez. This is freaking crazy. This is masterful work from a composer standpoint and also from a random listener standpoint. This sounds so good and it doesn't sound confusing despite the fact this arrangement is freaking complex. Anyway, this game is full of incredible music that I want to break down. I'm gonna talk about all the tracks, Due Recompense, the Collapse Expressway track, the boss track for the final boss. You know, guys, all the beautiful tracks in this game. I want to talk about them. And if you want to support this channel to see more of this stuff more often, you can do so on Patreon. I'm gonna see you in the next video. Bye bye.